The town of Red Hollow didn't believe in mercy. It believed in survival, and survival meant choosing who deserved to eat and who didn't. On most days, that decision was made quietly, without words, without guilt, just the simple act of walking past someone who was starving and pretending not to see them. That was how it always worked, until she appeared on a Tuesday morning. No one knew where she came from. No wagon, no escort, no family, just dust on her feet, and silence in her eyes. She stood near the edge of the general store. Not inside. Never inside. If she understood something important already, she was not welcome where food was sold. Her clothes were worn, torn at the sleeves, faded by sun and distance. Her face carried exhaustion, the kind that doesn't come from one bad night, but from many bad weeks. And still, she did not beg loudly. She did not scream. She simply held out her hand and whispered, "Bread, please." The first man who passed her didn't even slow down. The second laughed under his breath. The third avoided her gaze completely, and then came the fourth. A woman holding a child. She pulled the child closer and said, "Don't look at her." Not cruelly, not loudly, just like it was a lesson, like she was teaching survival. And so the Apache woman stood there, slowly becoming part of the background, like a broken fence, like a forgotten sign, like something the town had already decided to erase. But someone was watching, from across the street, leaning against a wooden post, hat low, sharp. A cowboy. His name was Ethan Cole. He wasn't famous, he wasn't feared, but he was known for one thing. He didn't like injustice, even when it was convenient, and in that town, that made him dangerous. He watched her for a long time, long enough to notice something others didn't. She wasn't just hungry, she was waiting, not for food, not for kindness, but for something else, something heavier, something like resignation, like she had already accepted the world would not change for her. That thought bothered him more than it should have. He pushed off the post and walked across the street. People noticed immediately. Whispers began like dry leaves in wind. "Don't do it. That's trouble. She's Apache." But Ethan didn't slow down. He stopped in front of her. For a moment, neither spoke. She didn't look surprised. That was the first strange thing. She expected him. Finally, he said quietly, "Why are you still standing here?" She blinked slowly. The question was unfamiliar, then answered, "Because I haven't eaten." Simple, honest, not emotional, just fact. Something inside him tightened. He turned toward the store, took out a few coins, walked inside. When he came back out, he handed her bread. Warm, fresh, real. She stared at it, not taking it immediately. As if touching it might make it disappear. Then she finally broke it in half and ate, slowly, careful, like she was afraid even the act of eating might be taken away. Ethan didn't leave. He stayed there, watching her, not judging, not questioning, just observing, and that alone made people uncomfortable. A man across the street muttered, "He's going to get himself killed." And maybe he was right, because in Red Hollow, helping the wrong person wasn't kindness. It was choosing a side. After she finished eating, she wiped her hands on her dress. Then she looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, spoke something that wasn't about food. "You shouldn't have done that." Ethan tilted his head slightly. "Why?" A pause, then she said, "Because now they'll notice you." "Who's they?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes moved, scanning the street, like she was measuring distance. Then she said quietly, "The ones who own this town without wearing a badge." That was all she said, but it was enough. Before he could ask more, she stepped back, not running, fleeing, just withdrawing, like someone closing a door slowly. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing between buildings. And Ethan stood there longer than he should have, because something about her words didn't feel like warning. It felt like truth. That night, he couldn't sleep. The wind outside his cabin kept shifting, carrying sounds that didn't belong together, and in his mind, he kept seeing her eyes, not bay, not pleading, but waiting. Like midnight mattered. Like something was coming. The next day, she didn't appear in the same spot, but the town felt different, more alert, more tense, like something had been disturbed, and by evening, Ethan saw something that changed everything. A rider he didn't recognize entered town. He didn't speak, didn't stop, just looked around slowly, searching, and when his eyes passed Ethan, he didn't look away, he stared like he knew. Then he left. No words. No conflict, just gone. Ethan felt it then. Pressure, invisible, building of the town had just been marked, and he realized something chilling. The Apache woman wasn't just starving, she was running, and whatever she was running from had finally started to look for her. The town of Red Hollow had a strange way of changing at night, not visually, but emotionally. During the day, it was noise, trade, movement, survival. At night, it became something else, something that felt watched, even when no one was there. Ethan noticed it the second night after meeting her. The wind didn't feel normal anymore. It felt directed, like it was carrying messages between places no one could see. And then it happened. He found it. A small piece of folded paper slipped under the door of his cabin. No signature. No mark. Just one line. Come at midnight. Alone. Ethan stared at it for a long time, because messages like this didn't exist in Red Hollow. People didn't invite you anywhere alone. They warned you. They threatened you. They avoided you. But they did not invite you into darkness. He folded the paper slowly, sat down near the fire, and for the first time, he hesitated, because every instinct he had said the same thing. This is a trap. But her face returned to his mind. Not scared. Not desperate. Controlled. Like she had already accepted whatever midnight would bring. That was what disturbed him most. He made a decision. He would go, but not as prey. As observer. Midnight approached. Desert at midnight is not empty. It only pretends to be. Ethan rode slowly, keeping distance from the main path. The sky was sharp with stars. The moon was thin, barely enough light to trust your own shadow. The canyon she had described was outside town limits, a place people avoided, not because of animals, but because of stories. Stories always grow in places like this, and in the West, stories are often warnings wearing disguises. When he arrived, he stopped his horse. Silence. Complete. No wind. No insects. No movement. That was the first wrong thing. Nature is never silent. Then he saw it. A faint glow deeper in the canyon. Firelight. Small, controlled, hidden, and beneath it, a figure standing still, waiting her. The Apache woman. Ethan dismounted slowly. No sudden movement. No sound. And as he stepped closer, he noticed something immediately. She wasn't afraid. Not at all. That was wrong, or rather, that was revealing, because people being hunted are never calm in open darkness, unless they believe something stronger is nearby. Why did you call me here? Ethan asked. His voice echoed slightly. She didn't turn immediately. She said softly, I didn't call you. That stopped him. Slowly, she turned, and for the first time, she looked different, not weak, not starving, broken, collected. Like the version of her in town was only one layer. You came because you wanted answers, she said. Ethan narrowed his eyes. That note says otherwise. She glanced at it, then shook her head. I didn't write it. Silence. That was the first crack in reality. Before Ethan could respond, another sound came. Horse hooves. Slow, deliberate, approaching from multiple directions. Ethan reached for his gun immediately, but she raised her hand. Don't. Why not? He snapped. Because now, shadows began to form around the canyon walls. Figures. Riders. 3. then 5. Then more. Attack? No, it's circling. Aggressively, but position like they were guarding something. Or someone. Ethan's confusion deepened. Who are they? She finally answered, and her voice changed when she said it. Lower, heavier, more honest. They're what's left of my father's people. That sentence didn't land immediately, but when it did, it changed everything. Ethan looked at her again, really looked, and suddenly, the pieces didn't fit the same way anymore. You're Apache, he said. Slowly, she nodded. But not just that, she added. I'm the last one they didn't capture. Pause. Then she continued. And that makes me valuable. Ethan frowned. Valuable to who? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped closer to the fire and said, to men who erase histories they don't want remembered. The truth begins to emerge. Eon of the riders stepped forward from the shadows, older voice, calm tone, not threatening Ethan, but acknowledging him. She wasn't supposed to be alone, the rider said. She was supposed to disappear like the others. Ethan turned sharply. What are you talking about? The man looked at him, then at her, then back. She saw what happened at the fort. That name hit differently. Fort Ridge, a place Ethan had heard whispers about, never details, only rumors, always avoided conversation. The rider continued, there was no war there, not really, just silence afterward. Ethan looked at her. What did you see? For the first time, her expression changed, not fear, calm, something closer to grief. I saw what they did after the tree, she said. They didn't stop fighting, and they stopped hiding it. The fire cracked, the canyon felt tiny. Ethan realized something important. This wasn't just survival. This was exposure. She wasn't running from violence, she was running from truth. And truth in the West is worth more than gold, and hunted more fiercely. Suddenly, another rider spoke. They're already coming. Ethan turned. Who? The answer came from the canyon entrance, distant. Who's? Many. Too many. Random riders. Organize. Military. Pace. Ethan felt it immediately. This wasn't pursuit. This was execution. She stepped closer to him and said quietly, that's why I told you midnight. They think I'm alone. Ethan stared at her, then said the only thing that mattered, and are you? For the first time, she didn't answer quickly, and that hesitation was the real answer. The moment the hooves appeared at the edge of the canyon, everything changed. Not slowly, gradually, instantly, like the desert itself had shifted from silence to danger. Ethan stepped forward, without thinking, his hand already near his gun, his breathing controlled but sharp, because this wasn't a random group anymore. This was organized, intentional, hunting. The Apache woman didn't move. She stood still near the fire, watching the canyon entrance like she already knew the outcome. That calmness again. That disturbing calmness. Ethan glanced at her. You knew they were coming. She nodded. Yes. Then why bring me here? He asked sharply. Her eyes didn't leave the darkness. Because now, you understand it's not just my problem. But before Ethan could respond, they appeared. The riders arrived. 2-5. More than a dozen riding in formation, silent, controlled. Not bandits. Not locals. Not scouts. Something else. Military? Discipline. That was the first thing Ethan noticed. No shouting. No chaos. Just precision. The lead rider stopped at the canyon entrance. Did not enter, just observed, then spoke. She's here. Only 3 words, but they carried weight, like a sentence already passed. Ethan stepped forward slightly. You're trespassing. The rider ignored him, eyes locked on the woman. She belongs to an investigation. The man said, step aside. The Apache woman finally spoke, her voice calm, almost tired. I don't belong to anyone. That made the rider's expression change, just slightly. but Ethan caught it. Recognition, not surprise. Recognition. The truth starts cracking. Openth rider dismounted slowly, took one step forward, then another. While he was near the firelight, "You weren't supposed to survive Fort Ridge," he said. Silence fell instantly, and Ethan felt it. That name. Again. Fort Ridge. The Apache woman, finally, looked at him directly, and for the first time, there was emotion in her voice. "You burned it," she said. The rider didn't deny it, didn't confirm it, just stood there. Ethan turned to her sharply. "What is Fort Ridge?" She hesitated, then finally spoke. "It wasn't a battle, it was a cleanup." That word hit harder than expected. Cleanup. Not war, not conflict. Cleanup. The wind shifted, even. The fire seemed to flicker differently. She continued. "There were witnesses. People who weren't supposed to see what happened after the treaty signing." Then frowned. "What treaty?" The rider answered. "Instead, the one that ended a war that never ended." Silence. Ethan was beginning to understand. Slowly, comfortably. The Apache woman turned slightly away from Ethan, but toward him. As if finally deciding he deserved the truth. "They killed my people after they laid down weapons," she said quietly, and then called it peace. The canyon felt colder, even. The fire seemed smaller now. Betrayal. Revelethan looked at the riders again. "You're saying the army did this?" The lead rider finally nodded, but slowly, carefully, like admitting it cost him something. "We followed orders," he said. "That was worse, because it meant it wasn't chaos. It was structure, system, intent." The Apache woman stepped closer to Ethan. "They told you I was a threat," she said, "but I'm proof." Ethan stared at her. "Proof of what?" "Of what they buried." A long silence followed. Only wind, only tension, only truth hanging in the air like smoke. Then a new sound. More horses. From behind. From multiple directions. Ethan turned quickly. "More of them?" The rider shook his head. "Worse, they're not ours." The third force, Arrivachados, emerged from the canyon ridges. Different riders, different uniforms, different purpose. Not army, Apache, town militia, something else, private, paid. Ethan whispered. "Who are they?" The Apache woman answered immediately. "Men who erase witnesses." That changed everything. Now, it wasn't two forces. It was three. Army, witness hunters, and them. And Ethan was in the middle of it. Ethan's coesione of the new riders shouted from the ridge, "Hand her over and walk away." Another voice added, "You don't want to die for her." Ethan looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in his life, he understood something simple. This wasn't about her past. It wasn't about politics. It wasn't even about justice. It was about choice. He turned slightly, facing both groups, then said, "I don't care what she did." A pause. "I care what you're doing." That silence that followed was heavier than gunfire. The Apache woman looked at him, and for the first time, something in her expression softened. Not hope, not relief, something deep, a recognition. The first shotit came from above, not warning, not negotiation, execution attempt. Dust exploded near Ethan's feet. He dropped instantly behind a rock. Chaos followed. Immediately, shout, movement, riders, charging, firelight turning into flashes of gunfire. The canyon became a battlefield. Ethan pulled his gun, earned fire once, twice. But this wasn't survival anymore. This was collapse. The Apache woman grabbed his arm. "This is why I told you midnight," she shouted. "They want everything buried before sunrise." Ethan looked at her. "Then we don't stay here." She shook her head. "It's already sealed." Trapedrators closed in from all sides. The canyon exit was blocked. The ridge was occupied. The fire was almost gone. Ethan realized the truth. They hadn't walked into a meeting. They had walked into containment, a trap designed for one purpose: no witnesses leaving alive. The Apache woman suddenly pulled something from her pocket, a folded document, old, worn, stamped. Ethan grabbed it mid-chaos. "What is this?" she said. "Everything they killed for." Cliffhanger ending of part 3. Before he could open it, a rider charged straight toward them, gun raised, distance closing fast. Ethan turned, too late to aim, too close to react, and just as the rider reached firing range, the Apache woman stepped forward. Between them, Ethan shouted, "No!" Gunfire exploded, dust swallowed everything, and the canyon disappeared into chaos. The gunshot didn't just echo through the canyon, it changed the air itself. For a split second, everything froze. Not silent, frozen, like time had forgotten how to move forward. Dust hung in the air like smoke from something far larger than a bullet. Ethan couldn't see clearly, couldn't hear clearly. Only one thought kept repeating in his mind. She stepped in front of it, the aftermath of the shot. Slowly, the chaos began to return. Voices, hooves, commands shouted from different directions, but Ethan didn't move. He pushed forward through the dust cloud. "No!" he shouted again. Then he saw her. The Apache woman was on her knees, still upright, still conscious. Barely. Ethan dropped beside her instantly. "Why would you do that?" he snapped. Her lips trembled slightly, not from fear, from effort. "Because," she whispered, "they wouldn't have stopped otherwise." Ethan shook his head. "This isn't how it ends." But she wasn't listening. Her hand moved slowly toward the document she had dropped. The folded papers. The truth. The document revealed. Ethan grabbed it before it touched the ground. "What is this?" he demanded. Her voice was fading now, but steady, controlled. "Everything they buried." Ethan opened it, and immediately, his expression changed. Not confusion, not curiosity, shock. Pages of reports, signed orders, names, coordinates, confessions, and one central truth. Fort Ridge was not a battle, it was a cover-up. Entire villages erased after surrender, witnesses eliminated, records were written, and payments issued to silence everyone involved. Ethan's hands tightened. "This is impossible." The Apache woman gave a faint, almost sad smile. "No," she whispered. "It's just hidden well." The second force advent. Suddenly a voice cut through the canyon. "Step away from her." Ethan looked up. More riders. Closer now. The private force. The cleaners. But this time, something was different. One of them dismounted slowly, removed his hat, and looked at the document in Ethan's hands. His expression changed, just slightly, like recognition. "I fear you don't understand what you're holding," he said. Ethan stood slowly. "I do." The man shook his head. "No, you understand enough to die for it." Behind Ethan, the original military riders were still there, watching, silent, uncertain. Now, one of them stepped forward slightly. Then another. Something was shifting, not in strategy, in loyalty, because truth has weight, and even trained soldiers feel it. The Apache woman looked at Ethan, weakly, but clearly. "If you run," she whispered, "they'll still erase it." Ethan looked at her, then at the canyon, then at the men surrounding them, and for the first time, he stopped reacting. He started deciding. He raised the document high. "This is what you're killing for," he shouted. The canyon went quiet again. He continued, "You burned villages. You erased people. And you called it order." The private force commander stepped forward. "Put it down." Ethan didn't. Instead, he said something that changed everything. "You don't get to bury truth anymore." One of the military riders lowered his weapon. Then, another. Then another. The silence wasn't confusion. It was fracture. The system wasn't holding anymore. The commander shouted, "Do you know what happens if this spreads?" Ethan replied, "Yes." A pause. "People, wake up." The commander raised his gun. "So be it. But before he could fire, a shot rang out. Not from Ethan, not from the Apache woman, from one of the soldiers behind him. The commander froze, looked back. Disbelief. He didn't finish. He collapsed. Now everything broke. Command structure failed. Order stopped. Meaning anything? Men looked at each other. No enemy. No leader. Only truth. The private force began retreating, not because they were losing, but because they were exposed. And exposed systems don't fight, they disappear. Ethan turned back immediately, dropped beside her again. She was fading fast now, but peaceful, strangely peaceful. You did it, she whispered. Ethan shook his head. No, we did. She smiled faintly. You didn't have to come at midnight, Ethan replied quietly. But I did. Her eyes slowly closed. Not dramatically, not painfully, just gentle, like resting after a long journey. And then she was still. Aftermath. The canyon was empty now, not of people, of intention. The system had collapsed in that moment, not fully visible yet, but broken. Ethan stood alone for a long time, holding the document, wind moving through the canyon, fire nearly gone. Then he said quietly, they'll try to erase this too. He mounted his horse, looked once at the canyon. A T where everything had ended, then turned away, because now, he wasn't just a cowboy, he was a witness, and witnesses don't disappear quietly. As he rode into the rising dawn, a single thought stayed with him. She didn't call him to save her, she called him so the truth wouldn't die alone.